Hello world, Noah here, and welcome back to Modern JavaScript. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Yarn package manager. Now, Yarn is a relatively new package manager. It was introduced back in 2016 as a collaboration between Facebook, Google, and a couple of other companies, and it essentially builds on top of NPM, but adds a lot of additional benefits. Now, to be clear, Yarn is just built on top of NPM. It does not replace NPM, and it's not fundamentally different. Yarn projects still use the same exact package.json file that NPM projects use, they still pull from the same registry, and they still act in pretty much the same way. However, Yarn does have a couple of benefits that I personally believe make it worth it. The main benefit is just that it's a lot faster because it runs install processes in parallel. So if you're installing a bunch of packages or a package with a bunch of dependencies, it can run the tasks for all of these packages at the same time instead of one by one like NPM does. It will also cache data, so when you go to install a package, it'll cache it locally, so when you go to install it again later, it won't have to download it unless there's a new version. The output, I think, is a little bit nicer. It's a little less crowded, and I think a little bit more straightforward. And just overall, Yarn seems like a better experience. And so it's what I prefer to use. So in this video, I'll show you how to get Yarn set up, and then we're going to create a new project using Yarn that does the exact same thing as our old, our NPM-based project. So the first thing you'll want to do is head over to yarnpkg.com. That's the official website for Yarn. You can read about it a little bit here if you're interested, but then you're going to want to go ahead and, of course, install it. Now you'll notice that Yarn actually recommends that you use Homebrew, and so if you used Homebrew to install Node.js, and of course if you're on a Mac, then you can just write brew install Yarn, and it'll install the latest version of Yarn for you there. Now of course if you're on Windows it'll be different, and you can just download this installer, this MSI installer package, double click it, run it, and it'll install Yarn just fine for you. Of course, if you're on Linux, there's different instructions for that, but it's pretty much just as straightforward as for Mac and Windows. So once you have Yarn installed, you'll want to go ahead and open up Webstorm, and you're going to want to go ahead and to configure preferences, languages and frameworks, Node.js and NPM. You'll want to turn on coding assistance for Node.js if it's not already on there. For some reason, this checkbox seems to not apply to individual packages, and so you have to go in and configure it every time, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. It'll then ask for which package manager you want to use, and you'll notice that it's found my NPM and Yarn installations. If it doesn't find Yarn by default, you can just click these three dots, and it should just go right to the folder where Yarn is, or it should find it automatically. The point is it shouldn't really take any work. Now by setting this to Yarn, Webstorm will automatically use Yarn instead of NPM when it runs any of its commands. But of course when we use the command line, we're going to want to use the Yarn command instead of the NPM command. So we're going to create a new project. I'm going to call it Hello, and it's going to do the exact same thing that our Hello World project did. It's going to use that request library to pull some data from the internet, but we're just going to set it up using Yarn. So I'll go ahead and hit create. We'll get our project, and then we'll go ahead and open up our terminal here. Let's just check really quickly. So coding assistance is checked, and Yarn is checked, so that's all good to go. So we're going to go ahead and do, instead of npm init, we're going to write yarn init for initialize. So it's going to ask for the name of our package. We'll say hello. The version, 1.0.0 is fine. Description, we'll leave that blank. The entry point, we forgot to make our file, but we'll call it hello.js, so I'm going to say hello.js. The repository, we don't have a Git repository. The author, I'll leave that blank. The license, I'll leave it blank. And then private is just going to ask, is it a private project or a public project? And for our purposes, it doesn't matter, so I'm just going to skip it. And you'll see it's done. It says success saved package.json. And if we open it up, you'll notice that it has the exact same format. It has maybe a little bit less stuff in it than the NPM one did, but it's the exact same format. There's no difference at all. It's the same package.json, the same one that NPM uses. No difference at all. I'm just trying to stress, the fact that it's just the same. And so now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to install that request package. So like we did npm install request, we're going to say yarn add request. It'll go ahead and run, and done. You'll notice that the output, I personally think the output's a little bit cleaner. I kind of like the emojis too, but you can see it just tells you exactly what it's doing. When you have an install that's longer, you can actually see progress bars that show you how far it is into downloading packages or installing packages, etc. But you can basically see that it went and installed the latest version of Request, and then these are all of the dependencies of Request that ended up being installed, and now it's done. So once again, we get this node modules folder, and once again it looks the exact same as before. Here's our request. It has that same package.json file, and it has the exact same index. Everything's the same. It's the exact same code. It's coming from the exact same place. We just used a different package manager to get it. Now the one thing that's different is instead of that package-lock.json file, we have a yarn.lock file. And if you take a look at it, you'll see that it looks a bit different, but it's the exact same data that we had before. Again, you're not going to want to touch this file, but you will want to commit it. And basically this file just contains all of the versions of all of the packages that you have installed, just to make sure that everything is up to date and correct and all of that good stuff. And so now that we have this set up, we're going to go ahead and write the code. And what you'll notice is that from now on, we're not going to touch Yarn, and everything is going to be the exact same. Essentially, Yarn is just another way of getting your packages installed, but it doesn't affect your code in any way, shape, or form. So we'll make our file hello.js, and we're going to do the same thing, request equals require, and the request. And you can see that it autofills that name because it knows what packages are installed under node modules. And then we can just call request. The URI is http bin, I believe, http bin.org/json. So we'll just copy that in there, and then we have that function that takes the error, the response, and the body. I believe that was the right order. And we're just going to do the exact same code. We're going to parse the body. Oops, the body, just like that. And so this is the exact same code that we had before, no functional difference. And then we're going to set up our Node.js run configuration. The file is hello.js, and we'll call this run configuration hello. And then if we hit run, you'll notice that we get, of course, the exact same output that we got before. So this is just a very quick look at Yarn, just like the other video was a very quick look at NPM, but it was enough basically to get us all set up to actually download and install a package and then import it and use it. Now in the next video, we're going to take a look at a package called Webpack, and what Webpack will allow us to do is it will allow us to bundle our code with our dependencies into one individual file that we can then distribute, as if it were a program. Of course, we're going to talk about why this is important in the next video, but that's just a little teaser of what you can expect. So as always, subscribe if you want to see more, comment with what you want to learn. If you like this video, click the like button. I will see you guys soon with some more coding. Bye for now.